We all have heard about the birds and the bees. On today's Garden Time show, we tell you where new baby plants come from. We pay a visit to award-winning hybridizer Kevin Vaughn's garden, and we talk about how he's developed new iris, daffodils, hens and chicks, asters, and more. Garden Time is brought to you by Capital Subaru in Salem, Oregon.
Here at Capital Subaru, we are family. From you, our customers, our coworkers, and even our actual family members work here. This is my son, Casey. We're generations ahead of the competition, and we're always working to keep you and your family moving.
We're here for you. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
All the support you need, from sales and financing to service and parts. We'll be here for you for generations to come.
And generations after that.
I'm Blake.
And I'm Casey. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
Where it's
your way on the Parkway.
Welcome to the Garden Time Podcast. We're based in the Pacific Northwest of the United States in a Zone 8 region. This zone deals with plants that can survive in 10 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer. I'm producer Jeff Gustin with your hosts Judy Alaruzzo and Ryan Seeley. Welcome to Garden Time. Today we are outside in the garden. We're at the garden of Kevin Vaughn. Now, if you watch the Garden Time show, or if you're a plant nerd, you know about Kevin. Kevin is a local guy here in the Salem area, but a hybridizer of, daffodils, iris, daylilies. So how many different plants do you hybridize, different varieties?
I think about 15, 16 different kinds of plants. So it keeps me busy all year long. Yeah, I start with daffodils early in the season and then go right to the asters and Kniphofia that are blooming now. So, yeah.
But I mean, if you any of you remember the story, you've been to your local garden center, you've seen those huge semps that are like the size of your head. Those came from your garden. And,
that's right.
And you work with distributors and growers, and once you hybridize a new variety, it goes to them, right? Once they, it passes your approval.
Right, and so I don't propagate any of my own things. It's like I have enough fun hybridizing, but somehow propagating thousands of plants is not fun to me. But other people are very talented in that direction. I'm a terrible marketer too, and these other people are great marketers. They could sell ice cubes to Eskimos, and so I let them do that too.
Yeah. For the people that are listening, we're obviously in the trade and we've been doing this a long time. But for viewers that are listening and hearing the word hybridizer, what does that mean as a plant hybridizer?
So as a plant hybridizer, what you're doing is taking two varieties of plants, and what you're trying to do is to combine the best aspects of both of those plants in a new plant. And oftentimes that fails, at least in the first generation. But if you work it for another couple of generations, you'll sometimes be able to combine all the good qualities of plant A and plant B into a new plant. And then that plant is now ready to go on the market.
So what kind of things do you look for as far as like traits or attributes that you're trying to, say, improve upon?
So I grow everything out in the open. So all of my plants are hardy, at least in Oregon. They've gone through the miserable rainy winters and they haven't rotted. They've gone through the dry summers and still bloom. Their foliage looks good all year long, like pulmonarias that don't have mildew and things like that. Right. We're looking for plants that have all good aspects. And then of course, when I ship them out to the other nurseries, what they do, their situations are totally different than mine. Some are greenhouses, some are in parts of the country where, the climate is terribly different than here. If they succeed in all those places, then the plant can be distributed around the country fairly successfully.
Wow. So. And Kevin, when you say you combine two different plants and get the better attributes, you actually are like a bee.
Oh yes. I like to think I'm smarter than one. Some days maybe not so much. If you've seen some of my crosses, everybody gets pulled up. Oh. It was not a good day at the ranch that day,
right.
But other days I'm very pleasantly surprised, and and of course I've been doing it now for 60 years.
Whoa.
So
wow.
you know, I know a few tricks
Yeah.
by this point.
Well, people talk about GMOs and genetically modified. This is nature's modification of the genes. You're doing it by hand.
Oh yeah, so,
And
it,
so-
essentially it is a bee. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm just I'm making sure that the pollen I put on that particular stigma is that particular one. So I'll bag a blossom and things like that to protect it from the bees actually. So
Wow.
And then you have to wait for the seeds to ripen?
yes, so the seeds ripen and then I let them dry. That's what most of my seeds are doing right now is drying, and I plant them late in the fall. That gets them the Oregon moisture and the cold temperatures all winter, and I plant them late enough so they don't germinate in the fall. So they germinate in the spring. I get a nice flush of seedlings. They're very healthy at that point, all new growth, and I grow those seedlings out. A year or two later, I see them bloom, and then I start making selections. Now daffodils are slow. 5 years for daffodils.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's a really slow process. Irises like these ones over here, I planted those seedlings in the springtime, and they'll all bloom next year.
So a little quicker
Wow.
process.
Yes.
And then how many do you usually start with? I mean, what's like a big number?
Well, like
average?
yeah, the iris I try to do between 5,000 and 7,000
Wow.
of those each year, and of those I save about 2%, and maybe 2 to 4%, depending on the cross, and of those about 10% of that selected group becomes a name variety.
You have to be so
Wow.
brutal.
Oh yeah, yeah, but you know, you want to make sure that your customers are very happy with when I put my name on that plant, I want to be a
Right.
good one.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think
After
there's
all
a,
that work.
Yeah,
That's
'Cause I think there's a lot that we get used to just going to the garden center and the nursery, picking up a plant off the bench and taking it home and planting it. I don't think people really have any idea what has gone into
No.
that plant. There could have been 10 years of work ahead of time to make sure that plant sitting there is
Oh, exactly.
the habit that it's going to get, that it's going to perform in their garden, be the color, disease resistance, the height that you want it to be.
And mass propagation too.
Right, and then
Yeah.
able to reproduce
yeah,
it.
Yeah. In fact, oftentimes when I go in the big box stores, my hostas have been on the market for so long that they're now in the big box stores. And it's kind of horrifying to think I'm being sold in one of those stores. you know?
Well, speaking of hostas, let's go back. That was one of the first plants that you piqued your interest and got you started.
Right.
When did you start?
I started when I was 12 on those, and
Wow.
in Massachusetts, there was a very much a hotbed of horticulture when I was a child, and my neighbor Polly Bishop was connected with many of these horticultural players in Massachusetts, and one of them was Frances Williams,
Oh.
who was the mother of hosta. in
I
the
know
He's
that.
got one
Yeah.
named after him.
and so one day she came to my house and opened up the trunk of her car, and it was filled with hostas. And she looked at me and says, "It would be really good if you would start crossing with these, Kevin." And so I did.
Oh, cool.
Well, there must have been
Oh.
something that knew that you would be the person to do
Well, and I think I had some. My neighbor was good publicity for me too.
Aw,
you know?
that's great.
But I think she also she was in her twilight years of her own life, and I think she realized hostas are fairly slow, so you want a young person to start on.
that. Well, I was looking, and there was like over 70 different varieties
Right.
that have your name as a hybridizer that started. So a lot of these variegated ones, fragrant ones, those started in your hands.
Right. So I did my PhD on hosta variegation.
Yes.
Oh.
And so I was the one that discovered the patterns of inheritance. And so initially the very streaky variegated things had very poor substance. And so I took Frances Williams, which had very strong substance, crossed it onto these, and I immediately got a whole series of very strongly variegated plants that had very good substance. And they're still being used today. I'm amazed. One I named Breeder's Choice. all the breeders still use it. So, and the fragrant one, I have a little story to tell. When I was at Miami of Ohio in graduate school, there was a really nice garden next to the apartment where I was living, and she had a great clump of Hosta Plantaginia, the fragrant flowered one. And so on my way to school each morning, I would grab a few anthers of Hosta Plantaginia, and I would swipe it all over my variegated hostas in the greenhouse. And my last year in grad school, I had one full greenhouse just of fragrant hosta. Oh. And it smelled like arbutus, mayflowers. Oh. The smell was overwhelming.
Wow. Yeah. So you started there, and then you progressed on to other plants and up to these 15 now varieties that you work with. What was the next one, and where did your progression go from there?
Well, the Semps, of course, the Summer of Even was actually my first thing. My neighbor in Massachusetts, she had a collection of 300 varieties, which was the most in the U.S. at that time. And I was driving my bicycle past her house, and she was out crossing, and I pulled my bike into the driveway and asked her what she was doing, and she showed me how she was making the crosses, and she said, "Come back tomorrow and you can make your own cross." Oh. Whew, I was there.
When you talk about crossing, is it just as much as just taking the flower from one and the flower from the other and kind of rubbing them together and letting them do their thing?
In the case of the Summer of Even, what you do, you take the flower with the pollen and you just put it on a little hole. I use little pointed forceps, just force it right into the flower, and I use it to put it all over the stigmas of another. And so it's a very, very simple process, kind of clumsy looking. But it's,
so we could really do it in our backyard, but I think too what you guys, I have so much respect for breeders because of the record keeping.
Oh.
It has to be so detailed because it goes on for so long, and that's just amazing. I know that I would do it, and then I would like forget.
Yeah, which one was that again?
I know everyone in my yard has a pedigree, like
sure.
Yeah,
right, because you need to know the parentage of what's.
Yeah,
there is no pet 23andMe for.
Well, there could be.
There could be, but that's very important as a breeder especially when you're distributing the plant, is to know those parent origins.
Yes, actually, when you write your patent, you have to list the pedigree of the plant. So you have to know those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, you don't have cute names on a lot of your plants. You just have numbers and letters, so you can see it in your paperwork.
That's right. So when I row out seedlings, they all have a code, and that code goes with the seedling forever. So. Yeah. Until it's actually got a name.
Yeah.
So when you do go to, say, somebody acquires a plant from you, they have the rights to name that, correct? But the patent lives with you.
Correct.
So,
yes. And with irises, I am the registration authority. I get to name that plant for the iris. But the others, it's like in the case of the chick charms. Chris Hansen has a series of these now, and so they go through, like, some of them are food oriented, right? And then I have a series of giant ones, and they have all kind of mountains, canyons, kind of big structures, So he has a group of 4 or 5 people in his group, and they toss out names until they're happy with one. So.
And you have to talk about that most famous chick charms, though, because that was such a breakthrough.
Oh yeah,
Gold Nugget.
Gold
Nugget. Well, that was a sport actually of one of my seedlings that I created in when I was 12 years old. Oh. It's a sport of Ruby Heart.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's red and green. Ruby Heart.
Ruby Heart's red and green.
Yeah, and it went all the way to gold.
It was a single mutation.
Wow.
And yep.
Wow.
So.
That's one of the ones that just stand out in the garden center, and very popular.
Now we've got a couple generations from that. So,
so I know you've written books too, because
yes.
you've had we've done stories with you on the iris books that you've written. Name some of the types of iris that you've. Louisiana,
right?
Red apparently is the holy grail of Louisiana iris.
So my first job was with my first and only job was with the government, and I was in Mississippi, which was sort of an extreme climate, and I was at a government installation there in Mississippi, and a lot of things weren't happy to grow there, but Louisiana irises were one that did. And so I started breeding them. And my very first cross, years ago, I had crossed tall bearded iris that were red and black, and I got these interesting red-black shades. And I thought, well, I bet this will work with Louisianas too. So I bought a bunch of the best reds and a bunch of the best blacks, and I just crossed willy-nilly the whole group. And Red Velvet Elvis came out of the first cross. So it won the DeBalion medal. It's actually, for I think 4 or 5 years now, Plant Delights Nursery in North Carolina, it's their best seller. They sell thousands of it every year. So unfortunately, I don't get a nickel now. And
that brings up the whole remuneration thing. So you can sometimes just sell a plant.
Correct.
Or sometimes you can maintain you get a little bit from every plant that goes out. Is that how
right?
Some
And
of
it
it
kind
works?
of depends upon the plant. So with the Sempervivum, they're mass produced. So they shoot for 150,000 of a given cultivar every year, and I get a royalty on each one that's sold, and I get that for 20 years.
Nice.
Irises are a different game, because once a nursery starts selling an iris, every other nursery is going to grab it, and irises tend not to be patented, and so everyone has it, and so you get profits for the first year, or maybe a second, but then you get zero.
Wow.
So it's not quite as profitable. I find them so fascinating, though, I have to do it. So.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting
sure.
because people are always wondering how hybridizers make money. I mean, if you're spending years developing different varieties, and how do you get remunerated for all that effort? And
I'm
sometimes
still probably
it's
making 10 cents an hour.
yeah, you get it. And it's not like a huge amount of money, people. It's like fractions of a penny sometimes.
But if you have 1,000 or more, and you whittle it down to 1 or 2 or 3, that may make it somewhere.
Well, it's odd too. When I came here, I was playing with the Samson. I thought I'll never make a nickel on these, but I like them,
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's my biggest moneymaker. So, go figure.
Right.
So Kevin, as you're a breeder and you're not really affiliated with any big company, so you kind of have everybody that you can sell to. So is that unusual, or is it usually their breeders are attached to certain companies?
Well, it's partly what nurseries can grow what. So in the case of the Sempervivum, I have Chris that sells the Chick Charms and the Giant, and then I have Mountain Crest Gardens in California. They sell the ones that don't meet Chris's specifications in terms of he needs tremendous numbers, and they can grow with a smaller number of increases each year and still make a profit. And they sell for a bit higher price, and they always sell retail. So there's two differences. And with the irises, I have a person doing my beardless iris and a person doing my bearded iris. And so culture for those is sometimes quite different.
Okay.
And generally nurseries specialize in one or the other.
Oh, okay.
So that's the difference there.
Oh, very interesting that you kind of make those kind of relationships.
Yes, yeah. So it's always fascinating to see the nursery owners, come flying in and looking at things. And they have very different opinions often than I do in terms of, something that I've overlooked, it filled a niche in their collection,
So, I mean, who picks that? I mean, you're just talking, you have thousands of varieties. Do you invite people to come in and help you choose the...
Well, then with irises, we actually have judges that come in and evaluate. So there that we have that other, and if you see 3 or 4 judges saying you need to introduce that, Kevin, that's usually a good sign.
And it's not just always bloom, because we were just looking at some alliums out there, and you're looking at foliage color. You're looking at the habit of the plant.
Right. Yeah. So that's one thing I'm a stickler for. It has to make a pretty clump. And a lot of plants don't make pretty clumps. They're too sprawly. In fact, Roseanne, the geranium there, I don't like it because it's a sprawler. It's like I want a clump, and so I've been doing things that make tight clumps but still have lots of bloom.
So we'll look for that, because
Right.
everyone loves Roseanne.
Yeah, but it's
But
like,
it is a sprawler. But yeah, but having a new one like that coming
Yeah.
up, we'll have to look for a couple years.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. So when you have like these irises, and you're coming up with thousands of new colors or shades of that, how do you know that what you have is different than what's already out there? I mean, there's thousands and thousands of irises out there. Is there like a catalog that you go through and that one's a little bit different than this, or you just...
luckily here in Salem we have some pretty big iris growers. So if I just do the little loop here in Salem, I can see practically all the new things that are coming out. And I breed a lot of medians and dwarfs, and then I also breed some of the beardless iris. And here in Salem, it's mainly a tall bearded iris town. So I can, Shriners raise 40,000 seedlings every year, and it's hard to compete in my backyard with that.
Right.
But yeah, you've worked with the Shriners. You did autographing your book there, and
oh yeah, they're all great friends.
Yeah.
And they're such wonderful people too.
Yeah. So irises. What else? Samps. What else have you hybridized? What else has drawn your interest?
Well, the daffodils I started when I was in Mississippi. I sort of needed something early in the season to play with, Can't wait just to the other. And down there, of course, and different daffodils do well down there. Jonquils especially, and Tazetas do very well. So I started breeding a lot of those down there. And when I moved here, I shipped up, I had 2 huge China carriers that the movers provided, and I filled them with daffodil bulbs of seedlings of mine. And so when I brought them here, I probably had 10,000 daffodils, and so I kept on the crossing. Oregon's a little tougher in that you get so much rain during the daffodil bloom, it's hard to get good pollen, and so some years I get not too many seeds. Other years pretty good, but they grow well here, of course. And so oftentimes in 4 years, especially the jonquils will bloom, and in the fifth year everything blooms. So,
and like you said, everything is outside.
Yes, that's right.
Right. I mean, as we're sitting here in your yard, and you're amongst all these raised garden beds, there's no greenhouse structure around. It is your yard.
That's right.
But that's really something for gardeners, especially in this area. You want to make sure that they're really hardy. They're going to perform for the gardeners, for our customers. So.
That's right, yeah.
What were you looking for in those first daffodils? I was always curious, because people, they're looking for sometimes the cup. They want different colors than the petals. And what are you looking for? I've been doing is the split cups, which when I started back 25 years ago, they were a pretty raunchy group. They were the split cup is a daffodil cup is actually 6 petals that are fused, and what the split cup is, it splits it back into those 6 petals, and so oftentimes they didn't split uniformly, or they were kind of at odd angles and got stuck in the perianth and all kinds of nonsense. And so I started crossing the best varieties for shape that weren't split cups with the split cups. And split cup luckily is dominant. So I could take almost any other daffodil and convert it into a split cup by simply crossing it to a split cup. So I could take the most perfect daffodil, put that split cup pollen on, and I could get a row of almost perfect split cups. Wow. And if you go back to your high school genetic class, you have dominant and recessive traits. Right. So the dominant ones, you have to be careful because they can overtake your breeding.
In this case, I wanted to.
Yes, but the recessives a lot of times are the unique things in the flower, and you have to really work to bring those out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So oftentimes I'm the first generation. I see none of those recessives, and I have to sib cross or cross back to one of the parents in order to get the colors or the traits that I want. So, but this was like fishing in a barrel with the split cups. It was like oftentimes life isn't that easy.
Right.
So.
People think it's just as easy as spreading the pollen from one to the other. Right. But there's a lot of science. I mean, we're talking about the DNA of a plant, recessive genes and dominant genes, you need to know a little something.
Yeah, I do have a PhD in genetics. That does help,
Right.
And then you had mentioned a mutant, and so then that's always that kismet, and it
Oh,
could be
yeah.
something really great too if you
That's
could
right.
exploit it.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting process, and every day, especially during like the iris season when you have 5,000 or 6,000 seedlings to see, it's like Christmas morning every day. Or sometimes they're bad presents, but mostly good presents.
Right.
So those
great.
mutations, are those generally sterile? Do they not spread by seed, or can they do that as well?
It depends. So generally, they're what they call chimeras at first, and so you'll get a portion of the plant that mutates, and it'll produce a sector that has the mutant characteristics, and then if you propagate from that sector, it stabilizes. Generally, sometimes you lose it, but sometimes it's just in one layer of tissue too, and that's a problem because sometimes when you get a root growth off, and it's no longer that plant. So
Well, we've talked about on the show, we've talked about reversion, where
Yes.
and that's where we're talking about those stable genes and,
Right.
and the reversion when it goes back to the mother or parent plant, and it doesn't have that cool look or color.
That's right.
Yeah.
no, it's the iris is generally not a problem. Although one of the things I'm working on right now it's called transposons, and these are little pieces of DNA that jump from one place to another, and when they jump into a new gene, they arrest that gene, so it becomes a new recessive gene. And then what the other thing that happens with these transposon is that sometimes once they're in that gene, they'll pop back out and the gene works again. So you'll get a sector that has the gene working, but the rest of the flower it isn't. So you get these splashes of color of all different kinds. So I've now got them in the miniature tall-bearded iris that I'm working with. I've got them one of these transposon in a gene for anthocyanin, so I get a white flower with blue specks, and I've also in that same flower got one in the gene for carotenoid biosynthesis, so I get yellow splashes in other areas of the thing. So I got them all in one finally.
So do you have a lab that you're
No, I wish I still
playing around with?
I
Like
wish I still
microscopes
had it.
and all of that, or is it?
I was an electron microscopist for the government for 30 years, so but it's a little pricey to have it all.
But it basically just comes down, like you said, you're a bee and you're spreading
Yeah.
pollen, and you just know the genetic makeups of these plants.
Yeah. In fact, Barbara McClintock, who found these transposons in corn, was ridiculed for years because genes don't go bopping around, and yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Well, this has been an interesting start.
Yeah,
So
very
what
much.
we're going to do is we're going to take a break.
okay.
We're going to organize our thoughts a little more because we have just barely scraped the surface of what you are doing out here. So we're going to take a break. We're going to listen to Capital Subaru, and when we come back, we'll just pick up on more of this conversation. We'll be right back.
Here at Capital Subaru, we are family. From you, our customers, our coworkers, and even our actual family members work here. This is my son, Casey. We're generations ahead of the competition, and we're always working to keep you and your family moving.
We're here for you. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
All the support you need, from sales and financing to service and parts. We'll be here for you for generations to come.
And generations after that.
I'm Blake,
And I'm Casey. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
where it's
Your way on the Parkway.
For 75 years, Al's Garden and Home has been a favorite destination of local gardeners. Starting in a small roadside fruit stand off of 99E in Woodburn by Al Biggie, Al's has grown to 4 retail locations in the Portland metro area that also includes a huge growing operation near Hubbard. To ensure that you get the highest quality, Al's grows over 80% of the plants they sell. This 4th generation family-owned business is now one of the most recognized garden centers in the country. Stop by one of our 4 locations to learn why Al's is the first stop for Northwest gardeners.
The dahlias are blooming and the fields are open.
Stop by Swan Island Dahlias in Canby and stroll the nearly 40 acres of blooms.
From now until the end of September, you can also enjoy specialty foods, live music, take a class, or visit our new larger gift shop. Check out our Sunday market, pick up some fresh cut flowers, and even order your favorites for next spring. Check out our Facebook page for all the latest updates.
Visit Swan Island Dahlias in Canby, just 30 minutes south of Portland.
We'll see you soon.
And welcome back to Garden Time. We're with Kevin Vaughn, a plant hybridizer in his garden in Salem. And Kevin hybridizes, by your count, about 15, 16 different types of plants. And so we were talking about Kniphofia,
Right.
red hot poker, which a lot of people, they go by and they say, okay, wow, there's red hot poker, and it's the same. You have found some very, very unique colors. What got you, were you just driving and saw one and said, I could do something with that?
A lot of times that's how it happens, you know, it's
Really?
weird, yeah. I'll go to a nursery and see something and I say, I bet I could make it better, you know? Or, the only thing that surprised me though was that how quickly I was able to get away from red. Because I'm getting some really, I got pinks and mangoes and apricots and creams and greens and, you know.
Two tones. And
Bicolors of all different size and things with tips that are different colors and clear pinks too, which is something we haven't
that's
had
really
for
different,
yeah.
Because you see like the red hot poker, like we see, side of the road, it's like this big
It's
6
huge.
foot tall and wide kind of monstrosity, which can be cool in the right spot. But what we're seeing over in your beds is not that.
No, I'm trying to, some of the series that they've come out with now are too squatty that I find. So I like them, I'm going for 2 different sizes. One about 24 to 28 inches, but still a big flower head. And then I also want some tall ones because there's nothing so good as in the back of the border as a clump of these Kniphofia, especially some of these unusual colors, oranges and things would really show up. So I've got 2 kind of things. And interestingly enough, the company that's interested in selling mine, they want to sell them in 2 ways. They want to sell the cut flowers because Kniphofia you can cut the stalk before it flowers and keep it in cold storage and then put it right into warm temperatures and 2 days later you have a whole Kniphofia flower out.
Wow.
So the florists are going to love these because they're so unusual.
You don't see them at all.
Oh yeah,
and you're seeing and repeat blooming.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I select for is that I like things that have at least 2, if not 3 sets of bloom. So that's for the gardener and also for their for cut flowers as well. It's going to be a boon for both. So.
Right.
And the hummingbirds.
And the hummingbird. I've almost swatted a hummingbird, when I was out trying to cross, because they don't help in the process.
Oh no.
Yeah,
sure.
well, they have an idea, but it's not my idea.
Right. Oh man.
It's like leave my pollen alone.
Yeah.
I need that, right?
Yeah. And I have little bags I put over the top, which makes them not happy. But
there's other things in your garden.
Well, and there's plenty extra ones too.
So you have to be really proactive when the bloom is starting to form to be able to pollinate and eliminate any other distractions for that.
Correct.
That crossing.
So the sempervivum, I use muslin bags over the whole stalk, and that allows the pollen to develop undisturbed, and then also on the female side, so that there'll be no spray pollen coming in. So, and that's one of the things the sempervivum for years people have just collected the bee seed, and it was just dumb luck, and so I think that's why they never selected the giant ones, whereas in just a couple of generations, by crossing big on big, I was able to get the giant ones. So.
And how big are those giant ones?
I think the biggest one now is 16 inches.
Wow.
So.
The dinner plate dahlia.
It's competition.
Wow. Yeah, so it's been exciting and it's something I would not have predicted.
Right.
I thought maybe 6-8 inches, but I'm getting twice that.
I mean, because we look at like sempervirens, there's a lot of sempervirens,
right?
And they've been on the market for a long time. It's like, how many can you keep coming up with? But you're finding new needs for it, like the size.
Right, and then I've got some things that are jet black in the spring at least, and so those are ones that are being propagated now.
But then we were talking earlier about, heat tolerance.
Correct.
Right, as so as our climates are changing or conditions change and more drought areas and more heat, plants react to that so are you breeding towards finding solutions to those?
So one thing I'm doing in this patch here, we had a fairly rough summer, and the last 2 summers have been rough. So anything that looks good now or in September, like has a good red color still or a good purple color, I'm putting a flag on and taking a second look at it. I'll certainly, even if it doesn't make the market, I'll probably use it as a parent because I know it has great longevity for color. So, and that's so important, especially for the nurseries, because when they're shipping out these plants, if they're green as grass, they're gonna look. The picture does not look like what I have.
Because a lot of times you buy them in the spring and they're like those deep reds, and then by the time summer comes around, they've all faded out to green before they go back. So those are the kind of traits you're still looking for: is how can it keep that color in the hot conditions.
And I have some weird things too. I'm getting little knobs on some of them. Some of the echeverias have these little knobs on them, and I'm getting semps with that too. And so there's one now in propagation that has the little knobs on the leaves too.
So that kind of brings up another point. If you're like, okay, you have sempervirens and you have echeverias, can you cross any two types of plants together to get traits, or there's got to be some limitations?
There's an alleged cross of Aeonium and Sempervivum, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's kind of...
Listen to the doctor. But you'll never see a rose crossed with Semper.
No. So, but in Sempervivum there are about 50 species, and so in all of them you can cross all of them and get at least an F1, and so that gives you quite a bit to play with.
Right.
That's the other thing about the Nepophias. They seem to be able to. There's I think it's 67 species of Nepophia. Everyone will cross. At least that's what I found. Some of them less so than others, but they will all cross. And the next generation seems like it's even more fertile. So
interesting.
Once I make that cross, that next generation is more fertile yet.
Is there some in like the same families? Can you take like different types of lilies and play around within a lily family?
A little bit, yeah. And the same with the iris. I can take some of these dwarf irises here and cross them onto tall beardeds and get intermediate bearded. So there's, and then Iris pseudochorus will cross with Japanese iris too. So there are some things you can do like that.
So being a breeder, you have to be like creative, I think, and maybe look outside the box too. You're not just kind of, this is the holy grail I want to do, but you kind of look for other things too.
Yeah, so what I do when I make a cross, I have in my mind, I have an idea what's going to happen. And I have that, and oftentimes it's pretty close. Yeah. Other times, not so much.
You never know.
Have people come to you and said, hey, can you do a blue, rose? Or have they requested a specific plant?
No, I've never had. They've always come and just seen what I've been doing and
get their socks.
Can you make this one a little darker? I'd like a little bit shorter. I'd like a little darker. And if you can have it bloom in the month of August, would be great.
The asters I've had requests because we've had kind of a sorry lot of asters, kind of insipid colors and not such great plants. And so, and then some of the New York asters are just, mildew city, so. So I've been trying to do things with those that get a better plant, and I'm getting now the colors that I want to. So by crossing whites onto other colors, I was able to clear up some of the muddiness of the others. And that, in fact, I was taught that years and years ago by B. Warburton, who was one of the big iris breeders in the 60s and 70s. And she always said that white is important, not so much for being white, but what it can offer to other colors.
Interesting.
And so, so the whites generally have co-pigments, and they tend to be clarifying. So
Yeah, the ones that we're seeing in your beds, the asters, it's going to be really exciting in a few years when those are hitting the market.
Yeah, because I've never seen such dark colors.
They're beautiful.
And pinks, clear pinks finally. Yeah, so.
And really nice habits, because they can get so crazy. I mean, they're huge, and it's like the gardens are just not big anymore.
Right, yeah.
So you brought up a good point about diseases, and we've talked about powdery mildew, and some varieties of plants are susceptible. And is that something that you breed for as well, like to try to minimize those disease?
Yeah, so I tend to use, I never use a cultivar that shows any kind of disease. I avoid them like the plague. In fact, they usually just get ripped up because I don't want to even be tempted. In fact, there are irises that I bought, paid good money for, and after I seen them bloom here, and I've not been happy with their plant, and so out they go. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking too earlier about breeding in fragrance and stuff. I know a lot of times breeders will go for color. Like roses were known for that, and then they lose the fragrance. Is that something that it goes into consideration when you're breeding? Is it you try to bring all the traits together, or just the best, and do you lose some sometimes based on your hybridization?
I've tried as many as I can. The dianthus that I've been breeding are some really fragrant ones. So those, it's a real key item to me. I think the ones that they bred it out, it's not a good thing. You know, I like the smell of pinks.
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah. So the irises, it's sort of a if it has it, can be a good thing. Although the miniature tall bearded irises that I breed, they're oftentimes used in arrangements because they have stalks that are about 2 feet high, and so they're good for cut. And so some of them that have an off fragrance are penalized because no one wants to smell something skunky, skunky on a kitchen table.
For sure.
Yeah, what are we having for dinner?
Yeah,
it's amazing how many different things you have to start looking for when you're crossing, and what you want to go after, and what you're actually going to be able to get.
Right. And I don't want to think. I know many people, the Dutch especially, want very stumpy plants these days, and I think we need some tall things still. It's when I have a border like this, I want to try to cover that 6-foot fence with as much beauty as I can.
That's true. Well, we also noticed some allium in one of your beds. So what's with that? That's a new one for you?
Yes, I've been playing with a little bit. I had liked Millennium a lot as a plant, and it's nearly sterile, but if you cross every flower,
there's a lot of flowers.
You'll get a few seeds. And the next generation can be a little bit more fertile. And so that group that we saw today is some smaller sections of Millennium, and also some with bluer leaves.
It is nice.
And
the flower stems are maybe a foot?
Yes, yeah. So they're shorter than Millennium, but they have the same kind of density of flowers.
There was a lot of flowers.
Yeah.
There must have been like 20, 30 on that clump we saw.
Yes.
That was cool.
Yeah, so I think that has the potential for the market, or at least another generation, you know. So they are miserable things to cross, though. As you can imagine, all this flowers very congested, and the bees like to cross them as well.
Oh, wow.
So you have to swat even when you take your bag off, you have to swat away the bees because they're there.
Right.
Hope you're not allergic.
No, not too badly.
Not too bad.
So when you look at, you have all of these different plants, all these different varieties you look for the other things. In your mind, is there a holy grail of something you would like to breed to get to?
I was thinking about that the other day. The standard dwarf iris have about 3-inch flowers, but they're on a 12-inch stalk, and you generally just have a couple of buds. And the other iris I breed are miniature talls, and they're about 24 inches tall, but they're much less developed. They've been harder to breed, and so their flowers aren't nearly as sophisticated. What I really would like is to put that standard dwarf flower on that miniature tall stalk. So I have something that's ultra sophisticated, brilliant colors, and that slender stalk with maybe 8, 10 flowers on the stalk. So that's one thing I made crosses this last year in that direction to try to get that flower moved up to that stalk. And so we'll see.
Does anything that make pollen safe from you? No. Because you find things all the time. Every time we come here, we're just fascinated.
Yeah. So. I stay away from shrubs because that's too slow. Probably a better money maker, but it's.
Well, we even saw the gladiolas. Did you see those over
yes,
there? They're kind of hiding over in that corner.
Yeah, no, that was another case. A friend brought some miniature gladiolas to an iris auction, and I looked at them. Oh, I could be interested in these. And so I sent out an order, and yep, lo and behold, they have pollen too. And in fact, they're quite easy. I mean, the parts are so. Any fool could do a gladiola because the pollen and the stigma are so well separated, and you can just boopity boop make crosses.
Right. So for the home gardener and people that want to play around and come up with different things, do you have tricks on what they should be doing or how to do it? And if they do come up with something, what do they do with it?
I think the first. Actually, raising seedlings and to flower is surprisingly difficult. You know, you have to do, like I have it optimized now that the iris, I can get them to bloom in 1 year. So that means I can turn over that bed and see new seedlings every year. So the first thing I would suggest to anyone wanting to do something like this is to maybe just get some seed from one of the seed houses and learn how to grow the seed just to bloom really well. And actually, then I would say, pick something that you find interesting. Say you're very interested in pink irises or whatever, and so I would get a bunch of the best ones, and then just cross every one with every other one, and collect all that seed, and you'll get some pretty flowers. You know, it may not be earth-shaking, but you'll get some pretty flowers, and then kind of go from there. So, but I did it when I was 9. So,
right.
So,
but there's a different process for doing it for the market than for just a hobby.
Oh yeah. So most people I think like to fiddle with it a bit in their yard, and so, and even an easier way is like to not be so scrupulous when you clean up the seed heads in the fall, because like asters especially, if you don't take those seed heads off, you're going to have a pasture of asters anyway. And so some people just do that. They find some seedlings in their garden, grow them out, and they might be nice garden plants anyway, if nothing else.
So we've talked about a bunch of the different varieties that you hybridize. So for some of them that we haven't talked about, just kind of a quick laundry list of ones that we haven't even touched on that you have dabbled in.
Well, I'm doing some pulmonaria because, again, I've seen too much in the way of mildew and bad plants. And another thing, most of the pulmonaria in the market are chance seedlings too. They just came up in someone's yard, and so I thought, okay, I can do better. And so it's been interesting. I've been crossing the blue flowered ones and the kind of the rosy pink ones, and the F1 hybrid is actually either blue with pink stripes or pink with blue stripes in the flowers. So already it's something different, and it's pretty easy you get very few seeds per capsule. They're kind of like a little nut, and you only get 2 or 3 seeds, so you don't get much reward from your crossing. But most of them are pretty nice plants, though. So even if you give them away, people are pleased.
Yeah, right. And you've written books, so I know that you've written an iris book. What other books can people look for?
I have two iris books. One's on the beardless irises, and then one on the dwarf and median irises. And I consider them kind of my missionary works in those areas, because I think most people know tall bearded irises. I mean, everyone goes to the Shriners every year to see that magnificent bloom. But I think these other irises are certainly less known, but I think a lot of them are easier of culture, or they grow in spots that a tall bearded iris wouldn't prefer, like in wet soil and things like that. The Spuria iris here I find are very easy. It's like you plant them and you could forget them, you know. The clump just gets prettier every year. I like that kind of a plant. In fact, my neighbor in Massachusetts, she planted a Spuria called Sunny Day in 1959, and when she passed away in 2002, the clump was 6 feet across, and it had 50 bloom stalks. And she never touched it all those years. It just got better and better.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of plants like out there that people don't know about. And so, but the Shriners, when I was there signing autographs, copies of my books, they were twisting my arm to do a tall bearded iris book. We could sell lots of that one, Kevin.
Especially write a book about it. Yeah.
So I actually have toyed. I've got a couple outlines that I'm playing with, so we'll see.
Great.
So people can find what's the name of the book and the two books that you've...
So I have, one is called Beardless Irises, a plan for every garden situation, and Dwarf and Median Irises, Jewels of the Iris World.
And so people can go online and find those?
Yes, and then I have a Sempervivum book too.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful one.
So.
And your talents don't end at plants. You play music, and you're in a symphony.
Yeah, no, I play in the Salem Symphony. It's the Salem Orchestra now, and Salem Symphonic Winds and the Festival Chorale Orchestra. So, and I play the whole clarinet family and the whole oboe family. So, yeah. My other neighbor was an oboist. So, if I hadn't grown up where I was, you wouldn't be talking to me today.
Are you gonna cross those and you can do instrument out of them? Or?
And I have to ask, do you sleep?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I have a little to plan my day. Though I have a little book by the bed that tells me what crosses I need to make, and I read that. That's the first thing I read in the morning, even before the breakfast. So that it's in my head where those plants are and what I need to do. That's why I planted all these new irises I'm going to be breeding with in one bed, so that I won't be running around the yard quite as crazily maybe as I do other years.
Excellent. Any other questions, guys?
No, I find it just
It's
fascinating what goes into a plant, and when you go purchase it at the store.
Yeah.
There was a lot that went into making sure that plant flowers and it does what it's supposed to.
Amen. Yeah.
So, are there any plants that are piquing your interest for the future?
Ooh.
Well, of course, the Nipophy and the Glads are both kind of new games for me, and now that I've gotten these clear colors in the asters, I want to see the next generation. I want to take the darkest reds to the darkest purples.
Wow.
Just to see if I get kind of that red-black thing going on.
That's neat.
And that cross is already on the list.
And how can people find your plants? That's the other thing, because people will be looking for them. But these, since you send these plants to other people to grow and propagate, they don't necessarily all carry your name on them. Or
Correct. So the Sempervivum Mountain Crest Gardens, I think, has almost all of my hybrids way back to my childhood ones. And then the Chick Charms, they're sold, of course, they wholesale them there, and then a lot of retail outlets sell those again. So
yeah, but I mean, your plants are everywhere, and
oh yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a little strange to see them at Lowe's, you know. A little scary, actually. You know, I've been at this so long. It's like, oh God, you know, I'm a fossil now.
Right.
You know.
No.
But you know what's been fun though, because with Garden Time we talked to you for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and it's been so great to talk to you for this long. And thank you for giving us all this time, because we always would talk to you for hours when we'd come to visit, but we could only show TV for 4 minutes, and it would be like, oh, but we want to talk about this. So it's been great.
No, I know we've always just enjoyed it. We wish we could bring everybody here, but unfortunately, we're not going to do that. But you can be found on Facebook.
Yes.
He posts pictures of his new varieties and some of the seedlings, so they're not named, but you can go see what he's working on and maybe even give him a thumbs up if you like it, and kind of help him make a decision on what to grow next. So, Kevin, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I always enjoy you guys.
And I'm going to have links to some of the places, your Facebook page, and also to the symphony. So if you want to go listen to him play, we'll give you that opportunity as well. So thank you very much, Kevin. Thanks, guys. We look forward to seeing you next time, and happy gardening.
Hi, I'm Sarah with Portland Nursery, where our passion for plants has kept us rooted in this incredible community. A lot has changed since we first opened our doors, but through it all, we've remained family-owned and operated, dedicated to providing our neighbors the largest selection of the highest quality plants Portland has to offer. With hundreds of new plants arriving each week, you're guaranteed to find something exciting and unique. Portland Nursery, a passion for plants, at 50th and Stark, 90th and Division.
The dahlias are blooming and the fields are open.
Stop by Swan Island Dahlias in Canby and stroll the nearly 40 acres of blooms.
From now until the end of September, you can also enjoy specialty foods, live music, take a class, or visit our new larger gift shop. Check out our Sunday market, pick up some fresh cut flowers, and even order your favorites for next spring. Check out our Facebook page for all the latest updates.
Visit Swan Island Dahlias in Canby, just 30 minutes south of Portland.
We'll see you soon.
Here at Capital Subaru, we are family. From you, our customers, our coworkers, and even our actual family members work here. This is my son, Casey. We're generations ahead of the competition, and we're always working to keep you and your family moving.
We're here for you. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
All the support you need, from sales and financing to service and parts. We'll be here for you for generations to come.
And generations after that.
I'm Blake.
And I'm Casey. We make it easy to join our Capital Subaru family.
Where it's
your way on the Parkway.